Hey there folks, welcome back to Marvelous Anime. Today we're headed into the shadows of anime's past, back to the 80s and 90s where sci-fi and cyberpunk collided in some of the most daring ways. From grim futures ruled by towering megacities to unsettling explorations of technology's grip on humanity, these hidden treasures deserve another look. So buckle up as we journey through a lineup of retro anime that never quite left our imagination. Goku Midnight Eye! Goku Midnight Eye is a two-part OVA from 1989 that adapts Buichi Terasawa's manga, and it's as pure a slice of late 80s cyberpunk as you're gonna find. The narrative revolves around Furinji Goku, a private investigator who was a cop until a series of suspicious murders swept across his department. Officers were committing suicide in peculiar conditions, and Goku is the only person who's ready to find out the reason why. His investigation leads him into a maze of conspiracy involving a large company and dark experiments that blur the distinction between human and machine. What makes Goku stand out is the bizarre transformation he undergoes after being nearly killed. He wakes up with an artificial eye that connects to every computer system in the world. With a glance, he can hack traffic grids, satellites, or private databases, turning him into something like a one-man surveillance network. This new power drags him into even darker corners of Tokyo, where criminals, assassins, and corporate creations lurk. The OVAs play out like a fast-paced detective thriller. In one case, he's forced to take down a woman controlling mechanical snakes that strike from the shadows, and in another, he's pitted against genetically engineered killers. The villains are always outlandish, but always tied back to the central theme: technology pushed past the point of humanity. Goku doesn't easily sail through such fights. He's bruised, outnumbered, and he must use his grit and the Midnight Eye to make it out alive. The anime is aesthetically representative of the Neo City fascination of the time, with its neon lighting, rain-soaked streets, and cybernetic body horror. Beneath the cool action, however, lies a tale of one man versus a system that devours whoever opposes it. Black Magic M66. Black Magic M66 is a 1987 OVA based on Masamune Shirau's manga years before he would become famous for Ghost in the Shell. Unlike that sprawling cybernetic world, this story is lean, tense, and structured almost like a techno-thriller. The premise is simple. Two state-of-the-art military androids known as M66 units are being transported when the plane carrying them crashes. Used in undercover assassination attempts, these machines are designed to be an unstoppable force once programmed to attack. The crash disables their controls, and suddenly, two fully armed killing machines are loose in the countryside with no command restrictions. Sybil, a freelance journalist, provides the main perspective. She's introduced as someone always chasing a story, and when she stumbles onto the aftermath of the crash, she realizes she's in the middle of something much bigger than she expected. Through her lens, the anime shifts from pure science fiction to a narrative of survival. The M66 units reset their programming and identify the granddaughter of their creator, Professor Matthews, as their target. Since then, the conflict has centered on the girl trying desperately to get away, Sybil trying to save her, and the military trying to hide the catastrophe until the androids are contained. The pacing is what makes Black Magic M66 a standout. After the M66s are turned on, they kill without any stopping as they rip through vehicles, soldiers, and buildings in cold blood. Unlike other anime villains that taunt or show personality, these androids are simply machines following code, which makes them terrifying in their simplicity. The animation drives that feeling home with fluid action, explosions, and detailed mechanical designs that show every movement of these killing machines. The OVA doesn't stretch into philosophical questions the way Shirau's later works do, but the core idea is clear that once technology built for war slips out of control, there's little that can stop it. In just under an hour, Black Magic M66 delivers a stripped-down cyberpunk chase that remains one of the most effective and underrated one-shots of the 80s. Bubblegum Crash. Bubblegum Crash arrived in 1991 as a follow-up to Bubblegum Crisis, carrying over its cyberpunk world but narrowing it into 3 compact episodes. The setting remains Mega Tokyo, a neon metropolis rebuilt after a disaster and now inundated by the influence of advanced androids known as boomers. With Genom, the mega corporation responsible for creating most of these machines, weakened after the events of Crisis, a new power vacuum opens. Criminal gangs and competing groups start to take advantage of the situation, and once more, the Nightsabers are compelled to intervene. The Nightsabers, Cilia, Pris, Lina, and Nene, are the main focus of the story. Cilia is still in charge, funding the group and keeping their technology a step ahead of the threats pouring into the streets. Pris, the biker and rock singer, is battling her normal distrust of authority, as well as wondering how much longer she can lead a life divided between music and warfare. Lina, who's more down to earth, attempts to keep her day job as she gets sucked into the conflict with the team. Nene, the youngest, possesses technical skills and access to police systems, but is always torn between her official life and her dual existence. They jointly go on missions to prevent the escape of runaway boomers, corruption, and to ensure that Mega Tokyo isn't forced through another crisis. Each episode is centered around an intensified conflict between the boomers and the intrigues of illegal organizations that seek to dominate them. It's more direct and aggressive than the previous series, with more suit fights and fast-paced city chases. Meanwhile, the reduced length of the runtime compels the story to run fast, and little opportunity exists to allow the slower character rhythms that Bubblegum Crisis occasionally had. Even so, Bubblegum Crash captures the same mix of sleek armor design, pulsing cityscapes, and the central tension of four women holding their ground against the tide of unchecked technology. While it's not as expansive as its predecessor, it delivers a condensed cyberpunk thrill that keeps the Night Saber's story alive, and it remains a solid entry for fans of early 90s anime. Dominion Tank Police. Dominion Tank Police came out in 1988 as a 4-part OVA adapted from Masamune Shirau's manga, and it's one of the more unusual cyberpunk titles of the late 80s. The story is set in Newport City, a polluted sprawl where crime has become so overwhelming that the police rely on literal tanks to keep order. This is a special unit that's dispatched in armored vehicles instead of standard patrol cars, a move that can cause damage to buildings and streets in the process. What follows is a chaotic and satirical blend of high-octane action and sharp commentary on excessive force. It stars the adventures of Leona Ozaki, a new police officer joining the tank police and immediately developing a strong connection with a small, personalized tank she calls Bonaparte. Compared with the giant machines her squad mates ride, Bonaparte is small and nimble, and this quality makes Leona underestimated and yet surprisingly efficient. Through her, the audience sees the absurdity of a police force that levels half the city just to stop a robbery, while also getting a glimpse of her determination to prove herself in a team of reckless veterans. Against them is Buaku, a melodramatic criminal genius, and his henchmen, the Puma Sisters, two genetically engineered women who alternate between flirtation and murderous acts. Their battles with the tank police furnish most of the dynamic of the show, starting with petty robberies and moving on to more serious schemes that shake up the already unsound city. The most interesting thing about Dominion Tank Police is its tone. It may seem like a joke on the surface with overdramatic gun battles, however, there's a darker layer below the humor. Newport City is covered in toxic smog, a warning about uncontrolled industrialization, and the concept of police rolling their tanks through residential areas is a disturbing echo of police authority gone awry. The OVA features a blend of absurd comedy, mechanical spectacle, and social critique, which lends it lasting appeal. Even decades later, Dominion Tank Police stands out as both a parody of action tropes and a sharp snapshot of late 80s cyberpunk anxieties. I-City, an anime film that plunges viewers into a chaotic cyberpunk future. I-City from 1986 is based on the manga by Shuji Takeya. The story doesn't take long to create a world in which psychic abilities, state experiments, and dark groups prevail. At its center is Kei, a wandering fighter who seems to be ordinary but has more weight than he thinks. With him goes Ai, a girl whose identity attracts unhealthy attention. The two are suddenly pursued by Data Control, an underground group intent on capturing Ai for reasons that only become clear as the chase unfolds. The pursuit drives the plot forward, with Kei and Ai crossing ruined highways and industrial zones while being attacked by enemies with frightening abilities. These include the Head Meters, the psychics ranked according to their levels of power, who serve as both hunters and enforcers. Their fights with Kei are bloody battles of will, which are full of destructive psychic energy that breaks steel and concrete. Bit by bit, we learn that Ai has been directly connected with these experiments and isn't really a bystander, but rather a catalyst to the conflict itself. Kei is also at the extreme of human constraints. What starts as a role of protector turns out to be something bigger as his own hidden potential is revealed. The movie leads to a confrontation in which the only way to survive is to be strong and resist the future that Data Control wants to see, having human beings turned into weapons and instruments. I-City is stylistically representative of its time. It features a coarse yet organic animation style and is filled with neon lights, mechanical wastelands, and psychic battles, which appear as chaotic as they are. It doesn't stop to meditate on profound philosophy, but the bottom line is absolutely clear. Uncontrolled authority and experiments deprive people of their humanity. That makes I-City a weird yet unforgettable addition to 80s anime, a creation that embodies both the vitality and the discomfort of the cyberpunk imagination of the time. Genocyber! Genocyber is a 5-part OVA that ran through the mid-1990s, infamous for its sheer brutality and the way it blends cyberpunk with body horror. Loosely adapted from Tony Takazaki's manga, the anime tells the story of two sisters, Elaine and Diana, whose psychic abilities are at the heart of a military project. When combined, their powers give rise to the Genocyber, a biological weapon so powerful it can level entire cities. The first episode sets the tone immediately. Elaine, a mute girl, a victim more than a villain, is captured by a secret research facility that wants to transform her into a weapon. Her counterpart, Diana, already quite cybernetically modified, is moody, volatile, and jealous of Elaine. Their encounter leads to the birth of Genocyber, a monstrous hybrid of human and technology that carves through the ranks of soldiers, scientists, and ordinary people. By the end of that episode, the audience understands exactly what kind of world this is, one where human ambition and cruelty creates monsters that can't be controlled. From there, the story widens. The subsequent episodes shift into war zones, political intrigue, and various experiments conducted by different governments, all seeking to utilize Genocyber to benefit themselves. The result is always the same: mass destruction on a scale that shocks even within the context of anime violence. Cities crumble, armies are erased, and innocent civilians are shown paying the price every time the creature awakens. What makes Genocyber so unsettling isn't just the gore, though that is what made it notorious, it's the bleakness of its message. Elaine and Diana are not villains in a classic sense, they're shattered children, reformed by those who view them as mere instruments. Their metamorphosis into Genocyber is the final result of their dehumanization, in which sorrow and anger are expressed in relentless destruction. Genocyber has no clean-up conclusion of its course, just the portrait of a mankind destroyed by its power-crazed mind. It's an abrasive and difficult watch, but it remains one of the starkest visions of cyberpunk anime's fascination with technology crossing the line into pure horror. AD Police Files. Released in 1990, AD Police Files is a short 3-episode OVA that dives into the underbelly of Mega Tokyo, a city already familiar to fans of Bubblegum Crisis. Instead of vigilante heroines, the spotlight falls on the official force created to tackle the boomer problem, the AD Police. These heavily armed officers face machines that look and act human until they malfunction or are pushed into violence, at which point they become nearly unstoppable. The series follows a young Leon McNichol years before the events of Bubblegum Crisis. He's hot-headed, inexperienced, and constantly learning that brute force isn't enough when dealing with boomers or the people entangled with them. Every episode is a self-contained story, yet they all revolve around the same themes: the vulnerability of humans in a world that overly relies on machines, and the emotional effect on those who must patrol the border. The initial narrative involves Leon in a case that reveals the black market as a source of boomer insanity, and it becomes apparent that crime is not entirely about rogue technology, but also about human greed. The second narrative shifts to an account of a woman who progressively replaces most of her body with cybernetic components, raising the question of when an individual ceases to be considered human. The last story is possibly the most depressing, as it explores trauma, retribution, and the potential for technology to exacerbate the worst tendencies when unchecked. Mega Tokyo is shown as a polluted sprawl where every street corner feels unstable. The AD police come with heavy weapons, but most of the time they come after the damage is done, and they can't do anything to reverse that damage or the people who were killed. The violence is savage, the air is fraught with disappointment, and the narratives are never neatly tied up. The OVA is a darker variant of late 80s and early 90s cyberpunk anime, in which technology reflects the inability of society, and those destined to defend it are the ones who have lost themselves. Cyber City Oedo 808. Back in 1990, a short OVA called Cyber City Oedo 808 dropped and quickly carved out a cult following for itself. It takes place in the year 2808 inside a colossal future metropolis simply known as Oedo. The city is a landscape of steel towers, glowing billboards, and networks that never sleep, but behind the neon facade lies a justice system struggling to contain its own chaos. The solution the authorities come up with is anything but noble: send 3 dangerous criminals out on missions that ordinary cops wouldn't survive. The convicts, Sengoku, Gogol, and Benton, don't get much of a choice. Each one wears a collar wired to explode if they deviate from the script or run out of time. Every mission is a gamble, with their freedom dangled like a carrot in front of them. One successful job buys them a few years off their sentence, but failure costs them their lives. Each of the 3 episodes spotlights one member of the team. Sengoku winds up chasing down an artificial intelligence that's taken over an orbital station, a mission that turns into a game game of nerves against something faster and smarter than him. Gogol faces a ruthless corporate figure whose experiments with outlawed technology push him into moral territory he'd rather avoid. Benton's case leans more into horror as he hunts a killer tied to ghostly signals lurking in the city's vast data systems. The stories are pulpy on the surface but carry heavier undertones about how easily technology slips from humanity's grasp and how those in power twist progress into another tool of control. Yoshiaki Kawajiri directed the series and contributed with his typical sense of gloomy mood and knife-cutting scenes. With a mere 3 episodes, Cyber City Oedo 808 still offers the tension, grit, and paranoia of a far larger epic, securing its place as one of the more impressive cyberpunk visions of its age. Armitage III. Back in 1995, Armitage III debuted as a 4-episode OVA, later condensed into the film Polymatrix. It tells a story set on Mars in the year 2046, where colonization is in full swing but social tensions run high. Human beings have created androids that have reached a point where the machine and human are almost indistinguishable. The so-called thirds do not simply imitate human behavior, they can also reproduce, which is disturbing not only to politicians and corporations, but also to ordinary citizens. To many, the idea of machines crossing that threshold feels like an outright challenge to humanity itself. The series opens with Detective Ross Syllabus, an Earth cop who transfers to Mars after a shocking incident on a passenger flight. A singer is murdered, and it turns out she was a third. On Mars, Ross is paired with Naomi Armitage, a headstrong detective who plays by her own rules. It's a shaky beginning to their partnership. He's reserved and tired, and she's reckless and bold, but the two are drawn into a series of brutal murders where thirds are being hunted and destroyed. The case continues to unfold, and Ross realizes the murders are a portion of a bigger conspiracy involving influential people who desire the existence of thirds to be forgotten. Meanwhile, the merciless ambition of Armitage is understandable after her secret is revealed. She too is a third, a living testament to the very fact that society is trying to disavow. That discovery turns the case into a very personal struggle over identity and life. The OVA exhibits all the visual and tonal hallmarks of a mid-90s cyberpunk anime. Neon-soaked cities, crowded streets concealing corporate malfeasance, and characters caught in the tug-of-war between technology and human nature. It's high style and at times violent, yet what makes the series serious is the heart of the relationship between Ross and Armitage. Their relationship is built on the trust that has been developed during a time of tension, questioning love, bias, and the true meaning of being human. Armitage 3 may be short, but it's one of the more memorable animes about cyberpunk in the canon. Appleseed. When Appleseed came out in 1988, it offered one of the earliest animated looks at Masamune Shirau's vision of a rebuilt world after global conflict. The film drops viewers into Olympus, a futuristic city designed as a model of peace and efficiency, ruled not only by politicians, but also by a central computer system that claims to maintain balance. To support this order, society has turned to bioroids, engineered beings meant to smooth out human weaknesses and maintain stability. On paper, it's a utopia. In practice, it's a city split between those who embrace this system and those who see it as another form of control. Dunan Newt and her partner Briarios are the central characters of the story. Both are veterans who have served in the city's E-SWAT unit. Dunan is hard, rash, and devoted to her principles, and Briarios, reconstructed with a great deal of cybernetic additions, is the conflict between man and machine that Olympus itself symbolizes. The two also become involved in struggles that reveal the weak roots of the city, including anti-government movements, terrorist organizations that aim to destroy the bioroids, and other authorities within Olympus who fear the power of the supercomputer. Their missions place them in the crossfire between law and freedom, order and chaos. The OVA is engaging even in its shortened version because it balances gun battles and political intrigue with bigger questions. Will a system that's meant to eradicate human vice ever enable real freedom? Is Olympus defending its citizens or silently depriving them of what it means to be human? The movie doesn't offer simple solutions, but puts these questions into perspective through action sequences that maintain a tense pace. The animation aesthetically reflects its era, featuring manually drawn mecha battles, bleak cityscapes, and an atmosphere of sterile stability and chaotic disaster. It lacks the refinement of subsequent editions, but it aligns the ideas of Shirao in a manner that is unruly and straightforward. Appleseed remains a key piece of late 80s cyberpunk anime, more about the consequences of humanity's pursuit of perfection than about spectacle itself. Marvelous verdict! And that's a wrap on our tour through these underappreciated sci-fi and cyberpunk gems from the 80s and 90s. They never got the mainstream appreciation of Akira or Ghost in the Shell, but they carry a kind of raw energy and strange brilliance that sticks with you. Each one feels like opening a time capsule, showing just how fearless and inventive anime could be. Which of these cyberpunk gems caught your eye, and which do you think deserves a comeback? Drop your thoughts in the comments section down below. We'd love to hear them, and if you enjoyed this video, don't forget to leave a like and subscribe to us if you haven't already. Otherwise, we'll see you next time, and until then, stay curious and stay marvelous.